Hey everybody, welcome to another lesson of learning Japanese. Today we're going to be covering another grammar pattern, and this is going to be a follow-up lesson to our previous video, which used the grammar pattern that is something 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 wakeda to mean a lot of things. That's why something, for this reason something, as you'd expect something, etc. And now in this video, what we're going to do is we're going to cover the difference between that grammar pattern wakeda and this one, which is toiu wakeda. Which will mean basically the same thing, and this is going to be a pretty short lesson, but you're going to need to have watched the previous one. So if you haven't done that, definitely do that before continuing on with this one. If you have seen that other one already, then, well, you're part of the cool kids, so come with me and we'll learn some new stuff. So the toiu wakeda grammar pattern is going to have the same definition as the wakeda grammar pattern in that it can translate to no wonder something, as you'd expect something, essentially something, basically something, naturally something, as a result something, etc. In a sense, because in our previous video we said that wakeda, the grammar pattern, has kind of two definitions. The one where we're using wake as a reason, and the other one, the more common one, where we're using it as a conclusion based on context information, or a result, or a situation based on context information. And it was plenty confusing to know which one it was using, because it was basically, there's no indication. That's kind of where toiu wakeda comes in, because this will mean the same thing as wakeda, but only the same as that second definition, the one where we're saying a conclusion or context or result based on context. So in a sense, this ulterior grammar pattern is kind of the indication, but it doesn't always pop up, but it's the indication to know that we're using that definition of wake, the conclusion one. So yeah, toiu wakeda is going to mean the same thing as the second definition of wakeda that we covered in the previous video. I want to say 100% of the time, but again, toiu is a very common phrasing, and there might be some small cases where it's used with this first definition, but yeah, I think for the most part it's safe to assume that it's going to mean the second definition. And so it also has the same construction as wakeda, with the exception of just plugging in toiu, the phrasing toiu, before the phrasing wakeda. So a verb plus toiu wakeda, in which the verb is the plain form, an i-adjective plus toiu wakeda, in which it's just the i-adjective, the word itself, no dropping anything, no particle or anything, and then a na-adjective or a noun plus the phrasing toiu wakeda instead of wakeda. And here we don't need to use the particle na or data as we did with the previous video. Toiu is going to replace it. It's not going to be added onto it as well. And so because in our previous video we went through a decent number of example sentences, we don't really need to go through too many here because they'll have the same meaning. But we'll go through one, and then what we'll also do is we'll explain a case where an example sentence could be wakeda and toiu wakeda, and they'll mean two different things. So we'll kind of cover the differentiation between this and wakeda. So for our first example sentence, which is going to be a normal one, we'll make it a pretty decently complicated line. We have Gakuentoshi wa nandemo chikai cara, untenmenkyo ga nakutemo seikatsu dekiru toiu wakeda. So this line right here is going to translate to something along the lines of, in a college city or a college town, everything is nearby. So even if you don't have a driver's license, you can get around day by day. Let's break down this sentence bit by bit, just to get a feel of what's going on here grammatically. First up, we have Gakuentoshi, which is going to translate to college town. It is a compound word of Gakuen, which means like academy or school, plus Toshi, which means city. So kind of like academy, city, college city, basically. We're going to mark that with the particle wa because it's going to be the topic of the sentence. Then we have our statement describing this topic, which is nandemo ga chikai, which is going to mean everything is close. Chikai is the adjective that means close, and nandemo just kind of translates to everything or anything. We're going to follow that with the conjunction kara to mean because. So because everything is close in a college city, and that's going to be our reason then, and now we're going to provide our conclusion, or the situation that is based upon this information, which is also why we're going to use the grammar pattern that is wakeda in the second clause. And so our second clause is untenmenkyo, which translates to driver's license, ga nakutemo. This is going to translate to do not have. We have the particle ga plus the negative te form of the verb aru, which means to have or to be. So aru turns into nai, nai turns into naku, te. Then we have the particle mo to kind of mean even. So even if you don't have a driver's license. And now we're going to end the sentence with our instance of our grammar pattern here. So seikatsu dekiru toiu wakeda. This is going to be using toiu wakeda with a verb. So the verb is dekiru, which means to be able to do. It's going to be used with seikatsu. So this is actually the verbal noun seikatsu suru, which Seikatsu means basically daily life, but it kind of has the nuance of to be able to live daily life or to get by in daily life, basically. So we'll change the suru into dekiru because we want to say to be able to get by in daily life. And then since dekiru is still a plain form of a verb, we can just plug in toiu wakeda, and that's exactly what we do. So altogether, once again, we have Gakuentoshi wa nandemo ga chikai kara, untenmenkyo ga nakutemo seikatsu dekiru toiu wakeda. This is going to translate to, let's word it carefully here. In a college town, everything's close to each other, so even if you don't have a driver's license, it's such that you can get by day to day. And so our translation of toiu wakeda is going to be it's such that. And that's actually not a definition that we included in our huge list of definitions for this grammar pattern, common definitions for this grammar pattern, but I think we chose this phrasing because it still invokes this idea of stating, expressing a result based on context or explaining a situation or conclusion. So yeah, hopefully from that you still get a feel of how the actual literal wording isn't as important as the kind of intention behind your usage of the grammar pattern. But all in all, of course, this is kind of another exhibit of how complicated the wake grammar pattern is, or the series of grammar patterns based upon wake is. Okay, so next up, what we're gonna do is actually try to ease the complexity or the complicatedness of this grammar pattern by explaining the differentiation between the grammar pattern wakeda and the grammar pattern toiu wakeda. So we're gonna do the same example sentence twice, using wakeda in the first one and toiu wakeda in the second one. So for our example sentence, we have Soka, Daremo henji shinai wakeda. That's going to be just using wakeda, as you can see, and now we'll use it in toiu wakeda. That'll just be the same thing. Soka, Daremo henji shinai toiu wakeda. Okay, so this is going to be pretty confusing now. Hopefully I can explain it well. So the first thing I'll say here is that we're going to have to assume that someone said something before this line was uttered to the person who's talking, and they received the information, and now they're saying this. In our first version of this sentence, the one with just wakeda, we're going to choose to translate that to, I see, that's the reason why no one will answer. For the second version, the toiu wakeda, we're going to choose to translate that one to, I see, this means that no one will answer. So you might be confused at how those two differ because it kind of feels like they're saying the same exact thing. But remember what I said in the previous video, which of course you should have watched before getting to this point, is that when we use wakeda, it can either mean reason or conclusion based upon context. Here, it's going to be meaning reason, and when we use toiu wakeda, that's pretty much always going to guarantee that you're meaning the second definition, the conclusion based upon context. So if the first version is going to be indicative of the reason definition, then the phrasing Daremo henji shinai is basically going to be a clause that's just modifying the noun right after it, which is wake, which means reason. So Daremo henji shinai reason is going to mean the reason no one is answering. And when we have just da right after that to end the sentence, we're just stating that noun. So it is the reason why no one is answering. This is the reason why no one is answering. So what this person is literally saying here is that the sentence that came before his, the thing that the other person said, is literally the reason why no one is answering. However, when we move on to version 2, Soka, Daremo henji shinai toiu wakeda, this isn't stating the reason why no one is answering. This is stating the conclusion based upon the context or the situation in which no one is answering. So he's not stating the reason, he's just stating the situation. Oh, I see, this means that no one is going to answer. So this is going to express the current situation in which no one is going to answer, that the speaker now understands is the situation because of that previous sentence that was said by the other person to him, and they gave him the information that allowed him to establish this conclusion or this result. And so yeah, hopefully that wasn't too confusing. It gave you some more information on how these two definitions of wake differ, and how the toiu wakeda is going to be the kind of indicative one of the second definition. And so with that, we are going to wrap up this coverage of something, 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 toiu wakeda, the grammar pattern that means a lot of things. That's why this, as a result this, as you'd expect this, essentially this, basically this, etc. And how that differs from the grammar pattern that we covered right before this, which was wakeda, which means the same thing most of the time. And so yeah, that now marks another lesson off of our series for the word wakeda. which will continue with our next lesson, which will start our coverage of kind of grammar patterns that have a negative form to them. Wake de wa nai, wake ga nai, wake ni wa ikanai. Okay, so that's going to wrap it up for this video. I hope you learned something, and I hope you enjoyed your time doing so. If you'd like to express that, you can like the video, leave a comment below, or subscribe if you haven't already. If you'd like to support more of these video lessons, or support more of these video lessons being created more often, or support more types of videos, please do consider checking out our Patreon page and consider becoming a patron there. Also included on the screen right now are, of course, a bunch of links on where to find and follow us elsewhere online, including our official website. And lastly, check out our Discord server. We've got a community of hundreds of people learning Japanese just there. So if you're looking for somebody to voice chat with just to practice speaking Japanese, or you have a quick question that needs a quick answer, or if you just want to talk about anime or music or manga or other Japanese things, learn Japanese.becauseofdreams.com/Discord. And with that, see you next time.